What up, what up, what up? Man, my G sharp key is sticky. All right, little early morning stream today. Excited to be here with you cats talking about intervals. So I'm gonna start playing some intervals over Yardbird Suite, and we're gonna talk about my resource called the Interval Method book. So let's play some Yardbird Suite here. I'll bump up the tempo a little bit. Hopefully the latency is a little bit better than last time. But yeah, so playing Yardbird Suite, kind of trying to think about playing, larger intervals and whatnot as we go through each example of each progression of chord change. I'm just thinking about larger intervals as I'm kind of going through the tune. And I use these formulas, and this is how I wrote this book called the Interval Method book. I use formulas kind of going through different sets of tonalities and chord changes to practice my intervals outside of the harmony, and then be able to use the same formulas and put them inside of the harmony. So let's check this out. So here's chapter 1 of my book here. Whoops, right to chapter 2. This is, like I said, these formulas that I use to be able to play, these intervals kind of anywhere on my saxophone that I want to. And these are some methods that I learned, throughout my studying with Chad and also Jerry Bergonzi at England Conservatory. And it was a big part of how I gained some flexibility with these, right? So these are the 6 formulas that we go through in the book. Each section of the book has these formulas, like I said, going through different progressions, tonalities. But the first chapter is my favorite because this is how we practice them. This is how we implement them into our instruments. And it's just playing these formulas with our major scales. So our first formula here, right? Playing that in all 12 keys. It may sound easy in C, but when you start going to like F sharp, D flat, you gotta really think about some of those keys. I'm just thinking about major scales, right? And I think, most of us know our 12 major scales, or at least a couple major scales. And just thinking about these major scales with those bigger intervals can help us gain that flexibility, right? And I think a secret to having more of a modern sound in this music is to be able to have these large intervals just in our lines, right? And what's really cool about large intervals too is like you don't have to think about playing outside of a tonality to sound modern. I think it's a kind of a common misconception that modern playing is like, Euclidean geometry scales and whatnot, outside of our tonality. And that's not really the case. A lot of the times, the most modern sounding people, in my opinion, really know how to command the harmony inside of the chord, in a lot of different ways. And then also, outside, I think it's definitely a concept of it. But like guys like Chris Potter, who's one of the most modern tenor saxophone players, I think, today, he plays a ton of these large interval phrases inside of a key center. I'll give you an example here on a Yardbird Suite. So I'm just going to play the first couple bars here, 8 bars, A section. And there's a line from Chris Potter that I transcribed. That's an A flat, right? It's an A flat major phrase. Or an A flat 7 phrase. So kind of a disguised version of a major scale or a dominant scale, right? But I'm playing all these different intervals. When I first heard him play it, I was like, man, that's got to be like way outside of the key or something. It sounds so modern and out, right? But it's just like kind of diatonic fourths in A flat 7, just in kind of different groupings. And in these formulas that we have a couple groups of 3. Right? And so on. So, that's just an example of a phrase I transcribed that once I realized what it was, I was like, oh, I can practice that. That's just a major scale or a dominant scale, right? So now I'm going to play that over Yardbird Suite, and I'm going to play it with the A flat tonality over D, so the tritone substitution of my 1 chord in Yardbird Suite. And check out how cool it sounds. So just one intervallic phrase in a major dominant key, right? Something that you would practice, maybe in high school or college, like an academic thing, can sound really hip in and out of context of the chord, right? So that's exactly what this book is trying to help you with, right? It's practicing them on your instrument as a pattern, and then as we get through the book, we start talking about tonalities and how to use these same 6 formulas through different tonalities. So if we go to chapter 2, whoops. Oh man, I hate how Preview does this. Okay. If we go to chapter number 2, these are all now minor tonalities, and we take those same 6 formulas and we play these with our melodic minor scale, which the melodic minor scale is the second most important scale, I think, in being able to be a strong improviser in this music, right? So being able to play the melodic minor scale over minor chords or whatever, we use that in a lot of altered modes in this music too. So kind of thinking about these same formulas now with our melodic minor scale. So if I take that grouping of 3-1, kind of a cool, sounding scale. And again, practicing these in all 12 of your minor keys, which we have them all written out in all 12 keys for you, by the way, is not only the command of your instrument will be great, but also the command of playing inside these tonalities and outside. Any shifting concepts that we talk about in jazz lesson videos at all, we also have shifting concepts in this book. Any of those that we talk about, can be applied with these intervals. So, when we talk about intervallic shifting a little bit later, you'll be able to intervallic shift with these 3 formulas. All these formulas can apply to anything that we talk about in this book, which is really cool. There's always a constant, right? These formulas are a constant, and then we have the variable of how and where we put them in the harmony, which is nice. That's why we have the book written out, major scales first, minor scales, then progressions and whatnot. So you're always practicing these formulas, and then it kind of becomes second nature, and you're able to improvise with them more and not really think about what they are. Just kind of plug and play, which I think is really interesting. So minor chords here. Also, I should mention that if you are interested in this book, there's a link in the description below to get it, and you can use a special code today, interval stream 5, to get $5 off the book, which is really, really great. So if you're interested in getting it, definitely take advantage of the discount while it's here and we're streaming together. I appreciate you watching. And also, while I'm streaming, I got the chat over here. That's why I keep looking over. So if anybody has any questions as we're going through, I'm going to be streaming for another 10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions while I'm here, be happy to answer them and talk to you guys. Okay, so here's that intervallic shifting thing I was talking about earlier, where we're going to take these same concepts, or the same formulas, excuse me, and put them over different chord progressions that are outside of our key, shifting them around tonalities. So a great harmonic strategy to introduce new colors to your playing is the technique of tonal shifting. In the subsequent section, we explore 3 of our established formulas by employing minor pentatonics and melodic minor scales while executing shifts of half steps and major thirds. These are 2 prevalent chord substitutions that have gained prominence through the contributions of renowned artists such as John Coltrane, Michael Brecker, Chris Potter, and Chad Lefkowitz-Brown. So let's check this out. We'll keep our C minor key going just for constant here. So let's look at, so this is formula number 2, and we're going up and down in half steps. So we're playing C minor and C sharp minor pentatonic, or sorry, melodic minor. We're going back and forth between the C sharp minor and the C minor, and we're keeping that pattern or the formula consistent. We're just shifting through. Here's another example with melodic minor. And what's cool about C sharp melodic minor and C minor is that D sharp or E flat is a common tone. So we can resolve here to D sharp, and it still resolves to that C minor, even though we're in the key of C sharp minor. Kind of cool, right? Almost like now we're in the key of E flat minor in a way. But it's interesting how all these, all these things work together in being able to have more of a command of this modern intervallic sound, So I'm going to switch now and play, here we go. I'm going to switch now and play like impressions, like a more modal tune. And yeah, we'll do it in C minor just for ease here. And for this example, I'm just going to be looking at these formulas. And this is a great way to practice this material, is having a book up, looking at formulas or lines or whatever, and then having a backing track where you can just look and try and force these things in and out of time, right? When I was studying at New England Conservatory, Jerry Bergonzi would have me do this with all concepts that we were learning together. He wanted me to immediately get the improvising part of it, in my head. So, practicing on the instrument is one thing, but then being able to improvise with it is another. And we have to practice this. We have to practice improvising. All right, so before I play impressions, got to make sure I'm caffeinated. Let's go. So I'm just looking at this book, looking at the formulas and trying to shift in and out of those tonalities you know, between up a half step and down a half step. And then also we have these minor ones, or minor thirds up, E flat minor over C, that have a similar sound to going up a half step, but they have a couple more common tones. B flat's a common tone, E flat's a common tone. So a little bit closer together. A cool way to practice shifting tonalities is to look at the circle of fourths, like have a chart of the circle of fourths up, and find different levels of different degrees of outside. So you'll notice with the circle of fourths, whatever the furthest chord or tonality is away from the one that you're playing on the circle. So like if your top one is C, like your top on the circle is C, C sharp or D flat will be at 6 o'clock. Like 12 o'clock's here, 6 o'clock's here. They're the furthest points away harmonically, but on our instruments, they're the closest apart, they're the closest together. They're half steps away. Isn't that kind of funny? And then any degrees on the other parts of the circle are other points of outside, and they all have their own sound that are unique to how we get back home to our tonality. So it's cool to sometimes practice like with the circle of fourths. Oh, what's up, Chad? Okay, I got a question here in the chat. I'm just gonna look. Hey Ryan, I have a question, but it's from the last live enclosures. Joe, often or no? Okay, how often or normal is it to use enclosures in non-chord tones or extensions like the 9th, 11th, or 13th? Definitely. And something I didn't 100% touch on in that video was enclosures and approach tones are great ways to start playing a new tonality. So similar to how we're talking about intervallic shifting, like going from one tonality to the next, approach tones are really cool, or enclosures are really cool to target an outside note, like a sharp 11, a flat 13, a flat 9, that then transitions you into a new tonality to play. So similar to how we're playing these intervals and using these different tonalities here in minor, you know, melodic minor, we can absolutely use those approach tones as alleyways or connector phrases to get us to a new tonality. So for example, I'm going to tie this in here together with these intervals. If I play, yeah, let's do this phrase here. So if I play this C minor to C sharp minor, before I get to F sharp to transition me into that new key, I can use an approach tone. Sorry, my G sharp key is so sticky. To go to C sharp, I can play that approach tone. I put F natural to F sharp to get me into that new tonality. I can also play an enclosure. G sharp, F natural, F sharp, kind of cool. Another approach tone. Right? So you can use them as ways to kind of go outside. You know, when we talk about pentatonic shifting too, I had one lesson on here, I think, where I play a pentatonic scale, an enclosure to a new tonality. So I can play like C minor pentatonic to like F sharp minor pentatonic, right? And I can use an enclosure to get me to a key center, or to get me to a chord tone of the tonality that I'm switching to, so F sharp minor. So I'll play patterns in C minor pentatonic. And I'm going to play an enclosure to get me to F sharp, right, to get me to that new tonality. God, sorry about the G sharp key. You know what I mean? So I'll play part of one tonality and another part of another tonality connected by an approach tone. So they can absolutely be used on some of those extensions to get us outside of the key, as well as playing them inside of the key to have more of that bebop sound, you know? Like all those, you know, famous kind of traditional, you know, phrases. You know, so that's the kind of vibe that I would go for targeting notes that are not like 1, 3, 5, or 7 of our chord. Extension tones can be targeted, but use them as a pivot to play outside of the key. Hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for asking. Also, just want to mention as I'm wrapping up here, that this interval method book that we're talking about today, with all these different chapters and formulas, you can use the code IntervalStream5. It's in the description below to get $5 off this awesome book. And I'm not just saying it's awesome because I wrote it. I'm saying because this is how I practice this stuff, you know. So definitely check that out in the description below. And we're having lots of great content on jazzlessonvideos.com. And if you want to study with me personally, I teach, and I'm about to go teach right now, this program called Jazz Gym, daily coaching sessions, really cool. You get to study with people like me, Chad, Nathan Gabriel, Cecil Alexander. We're all coaches. And it's a really great way to study with me, you know, or anybody, you know, on a personal level. We give you daily information and daily topics to shed. You can give us your feedback. I give you feedback on your playing and give you a personalized practice plan. It's really, really cool. So this new week we're talking about blues. Last week we were doing triad pairs. It's really cool. And man, some of our members are absolutely crushing it and sounding really, really great. So definitely check that out at jazzlessonvideos.com. And I hope to see you guys on the next stream. And shed some intervals, man. Have some fun with it.